Dr. Henderson, Ramadan Mubarak.
Thank you, Ramadan Kareem.
What does that mean to you?
Ramadan, it's a very important time in the Muslim calendar. So it is considered the holiest month of the Islamic lunar calendar. It's the 9th month of the calendar. During that time, physically, yes, we do fast from dawn till sunset, usually about 14 hours, I think right now, depending on the day. So you're abstaining from food and water. But also it's about, abstaining from other things that can cause harm to other people, like gossiping. Don't be angry. Try your best not to be angry. Be patient. Try to do good deeds. Help people. And something that's also important that's emphasized in Ramadan is about purifying your intentions. I think a lot of spiritual religious backgrounds can understand this statement too. It's like waking up every day and knowing that, what am I doing? Who am I trying to serve this day for? What do I want to get out of this day? Just trying to purify your intentions for your day. As a resident, it can be difficult in Ramadan because usually it's also a time where families come together, you're worshiping at the mosque, praying and things like that. And because of a rigorous schedule as a resident, it can be difficult to do that and sometimes a little bit isolating. However, here at the hospital, there are a lot of Muslim residents, a lot of attendings, and we've created a community with each other. So it's just nice to have that support with our co-residents and our attendings, even though we don't really have our families here. So Ramadan is very special. And then at the end of the month, there's Eid, which is the big feast, or it's the celebration, essentially, usually one day. But I think it's also important to perhaps think about what Ramadan means to your patients. So I know, for example, currently I'm rotating it in the hospital in Choa Scottish Rite, but there was a patient and she had been fasting with her friend at Ramadan. She wasn't Muslim, but she was just doing it in solidarity, and she had a syncopal episode, actually. So I think it's important to kind of think about that. Maybe if you're seeing Muslim patients, what are things that can happen from fasting all day that you're not used to. I will say that people who are sick or have chronic illnesses are not recommended to fast, but it can be exhausting for your patients that are coming in, but it can be a little bit exhausting for your fellow residents that you're seeing around the hospital. So just something to keep in mind in that way. But overall, it's a very beautiful time, and it's a time that Muslims tend to look forward to and then miss once the month has passed.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing. How do you have best intent and have that sense of being good, or when you're fasting all day? Is that something obviously that over time you get better at, or?
It's every day. Just every day, reminding yourself. I think in med school, one of my mentors used to always be remember your why. On those days that you feel like you want to quit, it's too hard, this is too difficult, just remember why you're here. And I saw something the other day, and it was, remember that perhaps you're living in the prayer that you asked for in the past right now. So we worked so hard to get here. And so Ramadan is just about emphasizing those things. And it's about reminding yourself that if you can do it during this month, then you can do it every other month. You can purify your intentions. You can try to bring your best foot forward and make sure at the end of the day, you can sleep at night and know that you tried your best that day.
Okay, awesome. What are some things you think that we need to be mindful of in general with patients who are observing Ramadan? I know you said the acutely ill, there may be some differences there, but just in general, what do you think?
In general, I'd say a lot of times when people are coming into the hospital, perhaps maybe they don't want to fully break their fast. So they're sick, but you're allowed to take medications and break your fast, but just be aware of that. A lot of times it can be exhaustion, hypoglycemia, things of that nature. And I think just even knowing that your patient's Muslim and that they're observing Ramadan, or asking them if they are, that'll go a long way. Because sometimes I think it can be a little bit exhausting to feel like you have to educate people all the time based on your experience. But if you're coming in and people telling you Ramadan Mubarak, that's so refreshing to hear that people know that already. I'd say just from a standpoint of Muslim patients, I think it's important to be cognitive of perhaps modesty or cultural practices. I know for me, that's always something that I'm a little bit aware of, especially in the emergency room when we're boarding a lot of patients and we're seeing a lot of our patients in the waiting room. Even if a patient's not Muslim, which I don't know, you never know what someone's religious faith is or what their background is. I always try to approach like with consent and give them the most modesty that I can. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, patients are like, yeah, I don't mind examining me right here in the waiting room. I don't love doing that, but I always give them the option. And I always ask like, can I examine you here? Can I touch you? And I think sometimes that's a little bit forgotten when you're just kind of going, just seeing your patients and you forget to pause and ask. So that's something that I would appreciate and I would want if I was a patient. So I try to keep that in mind.
Awesome. And what do you think your co-residents or even faculty, just the community in general, what things do you think we should be aware of in some way that we can be supportive of residents who are Muslim?
I'd say for me, something that my faculty made very clear is that they wanted to make sure that I had a place to pray. So Muslims, we pray 5 times a day, in the morning, afternoon, evening, sunset, and then night prayer. So it's rare that I have to pray all those prayers in the hospital just because of my shifts, but occasionally I have to pray 2 or 3 of them. And something that my program director made sure he had was he bought me a prayer rug, and he brought multiple prayer rugs and put them around GME. And so I feel very comfortable letting my attendings know like, hey, I'm just going to go pray real quick, or I'll be back in 5 minutes. And they just know. Mm-hmm. And I think there have been times in the past where, other Muslims can relate that sometimes you just have to sneak away and like pray in a stairwell or like at the end of a hallway. But I've never felt like I had to do that here, thankfully. They already knew coming in. Another way they've supported me is last year I was able to do all my shifts during the nighttime during Ramadan. So it was easier for me to fast during the day when I wasn't working. And then I came here and worked nights all night for all month. And that was something that it was so gracious of them, and they didn't make me feel bad about it anyway. It was just very supportive. So something I'd say is just encourage your residents that if they're here like past a certain time where they need to break fast, that they shouldn't feel like ashamed that they have to go and like slip away and eat real quick, or slip away to pray. And we don't mind if you eat around us. We're used to it.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thanks for sharing that as well.
No problem.